episode 12 of the Popanimecomics Lounge. My guest today is Adam Tilford, who owns Azure Pro and is the creator of Shattered Heaven. But before we get into that interview, please check out popanimecomics.com for anime, comics, and pop culture articles. And if you click on the affiliate links and purchase something from Amazon.com, I get a small commission which helps to keep this podcast up and running. So without further ado, let's get into the interview with Adam. So when were you first introduced to anime/animation?
Wow. When I was a kid, like a lot of people, like Sailor Moon and like Dragon Ball Z was on originally on like, I think it was like WB at the time at like 6 a.m, like before like school. So like wake up really early and you're seeing this weird animation stuff that doesn't look like anything from like Nickelodeon or anything like that. So that was when I was first introduced to it. I didn't really follow it that much until probably high school and Toonami and all that stuff. And when Toonami was on 5 days a week. Yeah, so DBZ was definitely that, and Pokemon a little bit, but Dragon Ball Z and then Digimon was probably my first introduction to anime back in the day.
So did you have any particular style that you just fell in love with when you were watching anime?
Oh man, I tried to emulate Akira Toriyama's Dragon Ball art a lot when I was first introduced to it. Like that was it's like I did comics and whatnot back in like high school and whatnot, and it's like I started going to that, so I have a lot of old comics sitting in a basement or attic somewhere that's a crapload of Akira Toriyama styled art. It was really bad, but I did a lot of DBZ art and fan art when I started getting into it. Eventually, I'm trying to think what like hit me about it. It's like what I loved about the anime at the time was it was just like a lot of the more of the serious anime. Armitage 3 was the thing I saw. I think that was like the first serious anime movie I ever saw. It was like on Sci-Fi. I was like, oh, this animation's really like detailed and really colorful and it's amazing. So it's like that caught my attention. So I think eventually it went more towards any of the more serious looking animation stuff that had a lot of frames. Dragon Ball Z, when it was good animation, it was great. But then, you know, as most people know, there was like multiple animation directors, so it was a crapshoot. It's like one time you might have a good episode, and then another episode would be really bad animation or artwork. Gundam eventually, clearly, is what style-wise caught me, but that didn't happen until much, much later in life.
So growing up in high school and in college, what did you primarily study?
I was an English major, so it was a lot of writing, and like the original idea was to go be an English teacher. That fell through because it was just like a whole debacle with counselors and not telling me everything. So I was just got my degree in English literature, but it was a lot of writing. It was kind of what my emphasis was.
So you became an animator, but before you went into that, what did you do with your English degree?
Well, I was, like I said, I was a writer and I was writing books, and Shattered Heaven was a book. It still is a book series. So it was a lot of that and just trying to find jobs that I could make money off of and live. But it was a lot of writing. Before I even started trying to animate, it was just a lot of focusing on the writing and finishing the books and, you know, finishing the story overall. Animation wasn't even a thought. Like while I was writing, it just wasn't there. That just kind of happened out of the blue. One time I watched Gundam. I was like, that looks awesome. I would love to see what I'm writing animated. Let's figure out how that works. It was totally random how that happened. But yeah, before I dived right into it, it was a lot of writing. And that was my main thing for a while.
So with animation, how did you go about saying, hey, I want to do this? How did you discover it?
Newgrounds is where I first started. And like I had watched Gundam. I had watched Wing was the first Gundam I ever saw. I really loved the fight scenes and how the mecha looked, you know, visually animated and whatnot. And it's like, Shattered Heaven was a mecha book, you know, the idea originally came from the game Armored Core. That's kind of how it started out. And I remember being on Newgrounds and seeing a lot of people doing original animations on Newgrounds. It was like, wow, that's really cool. People are animating stuff on their own. Like, I don't know if you ever frequented Newgrounds, but Newgrounds used to have a lot of original animated series. Like, They had there was the one group LifePoint 1 back way way back. It's probably like '07, and they had their Flash animation series Shin. It was probably the most inspiring thing I've ever seen in my life at the time. The animation was rough and it wasn't like super clean or great or whatnot, but it was just the fact that they were telling a story and they finished it, and it was just amazing to me. And so from there, I was like, you know what, I should try and figure out how to do that. And I got Flash and just jumped right into it, not having a clue where to start. And I was just like, you know what? I get the concept. It's multiple drawings thrown together, so let's play around with that. And it started with that very, very bad stuff. A lot of tweening and like still images, like it's moving, it counts, it's animation. But yeah, so then that diving right into it was a lot of trial and error, watching animation and seeing how they did things and like using that as a reference and just copying what I saw and going, that's cool. Okay, now I get it. And like it's a deconstruction technique in a sense. Where I also do web design and whatnot, and a lot of designers do that sort of thing, where you see something you admire and you just deconstruct it for yourself to see how it was put together, and then by doing that, you end up learning and eventually getting to the point where you could do it without a reference or getting to a point where you could do it on your own. Especially if you don't go to school, which I highly recommend. If you want to animate, just go to school for it if you have the time. Just if you're not in college yet, go to school for animation if you're passionate about it. I kind of wish I did, but didn't know this was going to be a thing.
So when did you, with your animation, self-learned animation background, when did you open up your studio, Azure Pro?
Well, it was like it's a studio, but it's not really a studio. It was an idea. Like I just needed a name for what I was doing, and like the concept, like what was it, like probably 2010. It's like I found other animators online that were trying to do their own original series. I was like, hey, why don't we just all work together and produce original content? And a lot of them loved the idea, so we kind of got together, and it never took off. The problem with animation is not a lot of people can follow through on it, and so a lot of the people that I found that were peers that were excited about doing it kind of just stopped doing it. Like they just like one at a time, they just weren't finishing content, or they just were getting distracted by other things. So it was just like, okay, well, I'm the only one really producing something at this point. So it kind of shifted from that to me just being an individual doing it. But under my Azure Pro, like Press is what I use for publishing books as the indie publishing, self-publishing thing. So right now it's become just a self-sustaining, just a me as an individual doing it. I would love to, get up together with other artists, other animator friends, or other content creators, and just like it would be fantastic to put together like an indie animation studio, just making indie, animations and whatnot, and making money off content creation. It's something I would love to do at some point. It's just a matter of finding other people that are able to do it and work together, sort of thing. It's hard.
So one of your major works that came out of your studio is Shattered Heaven. Can you describe how you came up with the concept for the novel?
Armored Core. Armored Core is a mecha customizable mecha game that came out on the PS1 first. I grabbed it on the PS2 because it looked cool and I liked the idea of mecha. I was like, that's awesome. You can customize your own robot. Let's do that. And the problem with Armored Core was it never had like a story. It kind of had like vague story stuff, and I loved the idea of customizing mecha. So it started off as a really bad fan fiction where it was like, okay, I'm making a story to this game that I like, and eventually as I kept writing and writing it, it just developed into its own thing. So I just went back and I got rid of all the Armored Core references and just made it completely original. Like a lot of the characters are based on friends that I knew. Because when I was doing it, it was like, oh, these are my buddies. Let's make mecha for them and whatnot. And so I had, oh my god, I had like extra memory cards because back then you needed memory cards for your like video game system to hold all your save files. I had at least 4 memory cards just for Armored Core alone to cover all the different designs that I made for like all the friends that I do. And that's how like I made the characters and I made little origins for each of them, and then it all eventually came together to make Shattered Heaven. And I spent so many years rewriting it, fixing it up, editing it, just to get to a point where I was like, all right, this is good. This works. And even now I'm like re-editing it. And when I made the animated series, I started it's my rebuild of Evangelion. My friend told me because I'm retelling it, and as I'm retelling it, it's become a much more fluid story. So yeah, it came from Armored Core. A lot of people think that it came from Gundam. It did not come from Gundam. Animation, yes, animation certainly came from Gundam. That's how I learned. But the story itself was written way before I was introduced to Gundam.
So, when did you know that you were going to be adapting your novel into an animation slash web series?
2011, I think. Like I started in '07. I came up with the idea of like let's make a sequel movie to the third book, and let's make that animated. That'll be fun. Like I started, it was very rough. The animation was really bad, so bad, but it was a really really good learning experience. But the thing that I realized, because I used to be very active on a forum called Armored Core Online, I ended up being an admin there for the longest time, and it's like that audience followed Shatter Heaven, the written form, and like I had gained a good amount of people that loved, that enjoyed the series, and they kept up with it and they wanted more. So I was like, all right, well, as a treat to them, let's do an animation. And then the forum died. So then when the forum died, I was left with a sequel animation on YouTube and other sites to something that no one else knew about. So it was done completely wrong because new people coming into seeing this animated version had no idea what was going on. They didn't know what the characters were, and it was a learning experience. And around 2011, I stopped production on the 5th episode of the original series just to try and figure out what I want to do again. Then I thought about doing a sequel movie to the first book, since the first book was published on Amazon, like Kindle. And I had the script written for that, but then I realized I wasn't good enough as an animator to do that, and it was just too soon. And it was like, all right. So then in 2013, I actually met up with Kerbifer, Chris Niosi, for the first time, and who has his own series called Tome, which just finished actually. And we discussed the movie concept, and he was like, "No, dude, it's like that won't work because people they're not gonna, for like an indie animation, they're not gonna want to stick around for like an hour and a half or something like that for something that's not super studio polished animation." So I was like, "All right, that makes sense. Let's reboot the entire thing." And I remember I was talking with him. I came up with the idea. I was like, let's take the first book and redo it as an animated web series. So in January 2013, I started working on that, and I scripted out. I think at that point, 13 episodes converted from the book. Like in the beginning, and like before I even started the animation, I just converted 13 episodes. Like, all right, that's plenty for me to work with. The original series, '07, 2011, I thought about doing a movie, and then 2013 just came to the point where it's like, just redo it as a web series and just be done with it.
So, when you are creating the new reboot, how much of the show are you responsible for in
All of
the
it.
animation and the sound and the voice acting?
When I started all of it, I did all the animation. I did the lack of direction in the beginning for voiceover. I just didn't have the time, and I did all the sound design, which is why the first few episodes use completely ripped Gundam sound effects. Episode 4 and on do not. Around episode 4, my friend Brittany Lauda was starting to do voice directing. She was directing a game called Y2K, which is coming out, I think, at the end of the year. It looks really good. It'll be on Vita and a bunch of other systems. I know it's getting a really good reception. So I asked her if she wanted to help me, do the voice direction, and she was on board for it. And we did a studio session in New York, and so that was fun. And then my friend Natalie Van Sistine offered to help with the sound design, and she has her own audio web series called the Elysium Project. Really fantastic. Audio dramas are coming back. Really good to listen to. So she jumped on and she handled all the audio balancing for the voiceover and the sound design and the music and all that. And it was just such a difference from when I was doing everything on my own to that. I used to do all the animation, mainly because I wouldn't feel right, not being able to pay animators, to jump on. Like if people had time, then that's one thing, and if they offer it on their own, and they could keep up, or at least mimic with the same style that I'm using for this, then yeah. But right now I'm doing all of it on my own. It's all the animations on my own, but it's nice to have someone doing the voice direction for me and the sound design. Such a relief. And I have a composer, Jonathan Johnson. He's done all my music since I met him in 2011. No, I met him earlier than that, like 2010 I met him. But since then, he's been doing all my stuff, and he does his own, writing and audio dramas as well.
So, how do you meet your deadlines? Do you set certain dates that certain things need to get done, or is it when it gets done, it gets done?
I try and meet deadlines. I try and keep at least. I break it down for the animatic animation should be done within 2 months of the episode. I've been pretty good. I've been able to get like animatic for an episode done in like a month and a half because that's actually kind of easy for me to do since I'm just doing rough animation to the audio track. I make a single audio track of all the voiceover without editing just so I can animate to that. So about a month and a half, I want to get the animatic done and then 2 to 3 months to do cleanup animation. It depends, because I do a full time job and other commitments that I have to deal with, and sometimes my body just needs to crash trying to do the cleanup animation over everything. But I like to try and aim for 3 to 4 months for an episode production. Depending on circumstances in life and all that stuff. And like once I have the animatic done, then I'll set deadlines for the sound design and the sound effects to be added. Again, since everyone's helping me on their own whim and no one's getting paid, I tend to be as flexible as possible to their, time constraints.
We mentioned this a little bit before, but how is it for you to adjust from a written book to an animation?
It's so much harder than I thought it was going to be. Like, I have so much more respect for directors converting books to movies because you just can't fit everything and it just doesn't work. It doesn't work the same way as a book works. It's like you have to think completely different. Like in the first episode, I didn't say anyone's names because I didn't write it that way because I'm just so used to be like, okay, so and so said this and here's the descriptions and whatnot saying who it is, and I did this whole like paragraph explaining the person, their characteristics. It just didn't occur to me. And like when I was done with it, I was like, I did not have any of these people say their. Wow, okay, that's a thing. You have to condense things, and you have to think what works in book might not work in animation, and vice versa. I've gotten a better hang on it now than I did when I started. But when I started, it was very, very different, very, very different. Now it's easier for me, but so much more respect for people who have to make screenplays based off novels. You have to think completely differently.
And then what's next for Shattered Heaven?
Well, I'm working on cleanup for the final episode. I debuted the rough version of the OVA cut at Liberty City Anime, which was an hour long. Went well because it's better. This whole thing is best viewed together. It's split into. It's probably gonna be, the whole series is probably gonna be split into 3 acts. I think. The first act is ending soon with episode 6, but it's just I've realized it all works better if the entire act is done together because then you can see the progression and not have to wait. Because it's hard when you release a 10-minute episode or something like that, and then it ends, and you have to wait like 4 months for like the next installment to come. So right now it's finishing the final episode's cleanup and get that out hopefully soon. And I'm working on something different to just take a break right now. I'm working on a trailer AMV sort of thing for the entire book that'll probably be out once the final episode's out of the act. And then after that, it's the series itself will go on a brief hiatus because I have to go work on my friend's web series, Dragon Star, like Kira Buckland. She plays Amy in Shattered Heaven, and working with her and Kerbifer on this. So once Shattered Heaven's episode 6 is out, I'm switching animation to Dragon Star for a bit to take a break from animating mecha. And like I'm still going to be working and prepping for Act 2, but I'm going to just take a break and just be like, all right, cool. I got the first act season done and take a break. I'm also editing the 3rd novel. Hopefully want to have that out by 2016. So that's currently what's going on with Shattered Heaven.
Now, you also worked on other projects outside of Shattered Heaven, beyond what you mentioned. Mm-hmm. One of them is Follow My Rune.
Oh, Follow My Ruin. That's a funny story. Yes, Follow My Ruin was an audio drama written between me and my ex. That was interesting. Clearly nothing is going on with Follow My Ruin at the moment, which is very sad because I really liked the story and the idea of it. It followed a female protagonist and dealing with kind of like a post-apocalyptic world sort of thing. And it was a really good story. I might revisit it and just name it something different and completely reformat it. But yeah, that was a thing that me and my ex wrote together and came up with the idea. We did 2 episodes of the audio drama, and then that just kind of X's. Those are things. As a voice actor, I was also on this audio drama, Dreamcatcher. Really, really well done production. Oh my gosh, by a good friend, Catherine Ranella. She wants to do a second season. We have some of the scripts for the second season. It's been a few years, but she's got a lot of stuff going on, so hopefully that gets back on track because I miss voice acting that character. It's a lot of fun in Dreamcatcher. But the other project that I have that I'm working on right now is an indie video game that I'm voice directing. Provided it gets funded, it's got 14 days left, and it's like nowhere near 10% of the budget. It's called Crossfate. It's an indie mecha real-time strategy visual novel sort of game. It's got 14 days left on Kickstarter. It looks really promising. I know they're trying to get a demo out in a few days for the game so people can see how it actually plays. That was fantastic. That was the first real voice directing job I've done, and it was just I only got to do it for the trailer for the Kickstarter, where I got to work with like people like Mike Pollock, Bryn April, Jesse Nowak, and I know this other person. I just don't want to say their name wrong, so as I'm cheating on my Twitter. Daniel J. Edwards. A lot of really talented people, and it was a lot of fun to work on. And like I said, it's got 14 days left to make a $90,000 goal. It's at 2,500. So hopefully, barring a miracle, maybe when the demo comes out, it'll get a bigger push production going on that, because I would love to see that game get made, and I would love to be involved in the voice direction and having to cast more people, and so much fun that could turn out to be. And then, as I mentioned, and I'm working on Dragon Star as well as another web series. It's only going to be 3 episodes though. I'm pretty sure that's all I'm working on that I can think of.
Now, you also wrote another book, which is Getting Started with Adobe Story.
Yeah, that was a funny one. That came out of nowhere. Like, Adobe Story is a script writing program that I got free with Adobe CS5, and I liked it so much because it's a great program because it does auto script formatting for you, so you don't have to worry about editing, and it's just there. It gives you a bunch of different templates that you can choose if you're going to write a film script, a TV script, a commercial script, or just anything else, or just regular documents. And I remember I liked it so much, I wrote a review on it, like on my personal blog, and a publishing company came across that and emailed me asking if I'd write a book on getting started with it. And I was like, oh, sure, I'll take a publishing job for that. And so that was interesting. It was the first time I ever wrote like a getting started technical sort of book, trying to explain how to use a word processing program. There's only so many ways you can explain how something works. But, it worked pretty well, and then Adobe, I think, upgraded and added stuff to the program so the book's not really super relevant anymore, or it like touches upon the basics of Adobe Story. But yeah, so I've been published traditionally and independently on my own. Writing is probably still my biggest passion over animation. It's just been a while. I kind of go in moods where for a while I'm going to focus on one thing and then I'll switch to something else. And so right now it's currently animation still.
On your website, speaking about the book you wrote with Adobe, you also provide certain articles about how to write a novel and a little bit about the industry. Is that part of your mission to kind of help express and
I feel bad because I haven't written anything new lately. It's been a while. I got so involved in the animation. But yeah, it's like I always wanted to write how I got through things or how I learned how to do things, because namely with animation, I see a lot of people that try and make animated series or want to make an animation, or I'll come across someone like voice acting websites looking to audition for people, and it's like, you're doing it wrong and you're rushing and you're hurting yourself before you go anywhere. So it's like what I wanted to do was I wanted to start writing out how to do it in the proper ways, at least from my experience on how to get into it. I really should get back to writing those. But I know it helps some people, and that kind of led to me doing panels at some conventions every now and then about this topic. I did one at Liberty City Anime Con, and that went really well. I was surprised at how well that went and how many people actually want to learn about making an animated web series. It's intense. But always trying to push out any knowledge or that I've gained from my experiences and doing things. I kind of want to get that out there if it can help anyone.
And finally, before we get into promos, do you have any advice for people who want to get into writing and who want to go out and create their own anime series and voice acting and really be part of this industry?
Just do it. Um, I can't say that without thinking of that stupid Shia meme. But yeah, basically just do it. Like if you want to do something, don't be deterred. Like if you don't think you have enough experience or schooling, who cares? Learn and be open to learning from people who know more than you. But try it. Throw paint at the wall, see what sticks. Get classes, especially if you want to do voiceover. Take classes if you want to do it seriously. Join some voiceover like forums online, like Voice Acting Alliance or Voice Acting Club. Get involved in the communities, but take classes if you can afford them, or if you're in school, take theater classes if acting's a passion. And especially with writing and just with really anything, it's just always be open to learning and don't think you know everything because the minute you think you know everything, the minute you're going to fail. If you want to write, just write. That's the best experience. That's the best advice I can give to anyone wanting to write. Is just throw their thoughts down and just write it out. A lot of it comes to you, and a lot of it will flow out. But when you want to go somewhere with it, again, take classes, look up blogs or any websites that explain the process of writing, especially when it comes to publishing and what people are looking for. Definitely be aware of grammar and know the rules as much as you can. So when it comes from a technical editing experience, get as much learning as you can, but don't worry, but don't let it stifle your passion and the story. The story comes first. You can always edit and clean up the grammar and technical aspects later, and always have other people read it because you're always going to be too close to your own story. So you're going to miss things that might not work because in your head they're going to work, but to someone else it's not. So always have other people read your work. As far as animation goes, be aware that it's a task. It's extremely time consuming. Don't like I've seen people with that say, I'm gonna make an animated series and we're gonna be on Toonami and we're gonna throw this to like TV Tokyo and whatnot. And we're gonna have 25 episodes and 3 OVA. It's like, wow, you haven't even started yet. It's like don't make overzealous promises before you've even started. Just test the waters, make sure you have the story written out and you know where things are gonna go. Look for free programs or just get Flash. It's like $20 a month for Creative Cloud and just mess with that. Flash is a good way to learn to get started. Not the best animation program, but it's the easiest to jump into, I think. And learn from other people and practice and just have fun with it. I think it goes for everything. If you're having fun with it, it should be easy. If it's a chore, don't do it. You're not meant to do it. That's the best advice I can give while rambling.
So, do you have anything that you would like to promote?
Crossfade, let's get it funded. Um, yeah, definitely Crossfade. It's like I said, it's got 14 days left on Kickstarter. It looks really good. It's got a lot of potential. It's you can go to their website. It's cross-fate.com, and that'll give you information on the game and the characters and like a link to the Kickstarter and all that stuff. And it's got 14 days left to go, and they're looking to get a demo out soon, hopefully. Naturally, plugging Shattered Heaven is awesome because that's fun, and I do that, and that's a thing. The first 5 episodes are on my YouTube. It's Azure Pro Studios. That's it. Hello. So it's youtube.com/user/Azure Pro Studios. That's a thing. So that's fun. So if you like mecha and animation is definitely Gundam inspired from the animation and a lot of the fight scenes and whatnot. Dragon Star when that's coming out. Anything else I've mentioned, Elysium Project, because that's my sound designer right there, and that's a fun thing to go listen to. Y2K, because Brittany Lauda has been a fantastic friend, and that's a game to definitely look out for. And she did a great job directing it, and a lot of talented people involved in that game. So you could go find Y2K, and I know they're on Twitter, and I know it's all over the place. It's definitely a fantastic RPG game that comes out.
Thank you so much for listening to my podcast. Remember to subscribe to my podcast so it finds you. And while you wait for next week's episode, please check out popanimecomics.com for anime, comics, and pop culture articles. Till next week, have a great week, everybody.